The discovery of the spat revolution in a concert equipped with Dolby Atmos, a live mix of the group Neko Light Orchestra. The reorchestration of film music played live with the diffusion of the films on a giant screen. A 3-hour show at the Gaumont-Wilson Cinema in Toulouse with the concept of 7.1 sound. The goal? To find and produce the sensation created by Dolby surround during a film projection, i.e. the feeling of being at the centre of an orchestra. It allows the sound engineer to control the position of a sound source in a three-dimensional environment. For example, it's possible to make the sound of a violin on stage travel around the spectator. It allows us to spatialize it. The point of this process is to generate as many audio channels as there are instruments on stage. Therefore, the spat is going to position each instrument in the virtual space defined by the sound engineer, beforehand or in real time. So the spectator can have the sensation of being at the heart of the orchestra. Whereas at the moment, generally speaking, spectators find themselves seated in front of the orchestra. Only cinemas propose a suitable configuration for the use of spat in Dolby Atmos mode. As well as a horizontal plane that is used for Dolby Surround, this adds a vertical plane that allows total immersion into the sound. Because to equip a concert venue with this facility, it would be too complicated and too inconvenient. I received the plans for the cinema theatre, which enabled me to carry out the design of the venue within the spat revolution. The Dolby Atmos can handle up to 128 channels, but it's rare for venues to go that far. Most have a limitation of around 30. Given the number of mic inputs necessary for the whole show and the number of channels created for and by the spat revolution, the realisation of this project necessitated the use of 2 mixing consoles. The first console, a CL5, was picking up the 64 mics on stage with the help of 2 Rio 32s. It covered the mix in 5.1 and generated the 7 monobuses and 4 stereo buses that correspond to the sound source that was to be positioned within the virtual three-dimensional space. It sends all its channels to the spat via a Dante virtual sound card. A second console, the QL1, received the 23 audio channels generated by the spat revolution via the Dante network and then redirected them to the cinema's diffusion system via an intermediary ether sound network and a digigram interface. The 5 principal channels, as in those that are found behind the screen, the left channel, the mid-left channel, the centre, the mid-right and the right channels, are in 3 active channels. Therefore, we must process them because we're obliged to bypass the Dolby CPU 150 processor that usually takes care of the atmosphere. This process is left to the DME satellite, controlled by the DME designer software. In all, 34 audio channels are engaged for the entire diffusion. With the spat, we're able to use the OSC protocol to control many parameters through the medium of an automation software, such as Pro Tools, for example. We have, therefore, the possibility to evolve the position of the sound sources within the three-dimensional space. Here we have a sequence that positions the source in a random manner. The spat generates a reverb that is, of course, found in the output section. The level and modelling of this reverb in each output is according to the position of each speaker placed in the three-dimensional space created. The spat allows us to affect the reverb or not at each source, which allows us to really spatialise the instrument in a three-dimensional environment. We're able to act on the level of the reverb, on the presence, on the brilliance, different parameters that will allow us to control the reverb for each source, therefore each instrument. The experience was more than conclusive, and all this despite the little amount of preparation time that I had. Thankfully, the operation and graphic of the spat revolution is very intuitive. The result was really astounding. The position of the instruments within the three-dimensional space created by the spat revolution is highly realistic, and with the soundscape thus modelled, the public's immersion was total. Following this success, we had the pleasure of repeating the experience with the Neko Light Orchestra at the Wilson Gaumont in Toulouse.